There we go. That seems to work. So, Jo, I am so
Hi,
excited for having you on. So, thank you for coming.
thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. Thank you.
It was obviously meant to be because I had a week in August where three different people, three different women said, "Oh, do you know Jo Phillips?" And I'm like, "No, I have not heard of Jo Phillips. Why have I not heard of Jo Phillips?" So then I went and had a little look, and then I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna send a little request over on LinkedIn." And then we chatted, and we could have chatted literally for the rest of the week. And then I've been on your podcast that's coming out at some point, and then you're on mine. So yay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And isn't it interesting the power of LinkedIn, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think it's definitely given me so many connections and so much reach. And yeah, being around somebody like you say, I could have chatted to you all day long,
No,
all
no.
day.
Me too. So you did the good girl quiz.
I did. I did indeed. And I'm not sure if it's a huge surprise, but yeah, I'm a rebel woman. There you go. So that was my end result, rebel woman. Um, and I think what was interesting is that even as I went through some of those questions, and considering the work that I do,
Hmm.
I still had to just sense check. Do I do that? Don't I do that? Who am I? Um, and I think I've changed so much over the years.
Mm.
But I have to say, I was extremely pleased that I'd come out a rebel woman. I would have been worried had I not. Um,
No. So you've done the work. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think when I think back to me in my early corporate life and early career,
mm,
I just didn't have the confidence to be a rebel woman. I had absorbed so much of those societal expectations, so much of the behavioral expectations for a female
hmm,
that I didn't even know I was conducting myself in a way that was detrimental to my career.
absolutely.
And when I think about it, it was everything from I would offer to make the tea
Because you were helpful.
because I was helpful.
So helpful.
Everything from I would offer to make the tea, I would offer to help clean the office at the end of the day, I would offer to be the one who was quite happy taking notes. Oh my God, there were so many things that I thought that this was all holding me in really good stead to show that I'm willing, I'm able, I'll go that extra mile. Um, Whereas now, fast forward the best part of 30 years, and you've got, I'll make you a cup of tea if I'm making one, but you've got no chance of them being offered. And if I'm making one, I will. But and as far as putting myself in a situation where I become admin for somebody else or I become super helpful, it's just not that's not what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to make sure that we set the narrative so people really understand our value proposition.
Mm,
Um, but I didn't know what I didn't know back then.
no. But it's the way we're brought up, sadly. So it's the way we're treated in
Mm.
schools. And that's why girls are performing better because we have all of this messaging around be prepared, be helpful, be kind, support other people, make yourself completely the doormat, and then you'll be appreciated, all of that stuff. And then we get that in school. And even now, I've spoken to some people who have left school more recently than you or I have. And
Yeah.
even now, girls are being forced to supervise the unruly boys in the classroom.
Because girls' behaviour is better. We're
Yeah,
supposed to be good.
we
We're
are.
supposed to we're supposed to work to the rules that actually work against us, the
Mhm.
rules that actually don't do us any favours at all. We're supposed to work to those rules.
Yeah, those
And
ones that are keeping us small
that's
and
right.
poor.
That's right. And I remember, I think back to when I very first started work, I remember being told to be quieter in the office, not be so noisy, not be so loud.
Oh yes, I am laughing and pointing at myself because I had the same feedback.
I remember being told not to express myself as much.
Yep, you're too bubbly.
That's right. Yeah, you're too bubbly. Any label you can imagine, I was given, and by the time I'd been in that corporate bubble for just long enough, I kind of then started to understand what their expectations were of my behaviour, and I conformed to that.
Mm.
I conformed to it to the point where I remember, so there was at one point I'd been tapped on the shoulder about a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in my early 20s. I'm in a great big corporate office in Boreham Wood for a huge recruitment agency, and I'm working in learning and development. And I get tapped on the shoulder by the guy who's the director at the time, literally in a hallway. And he says, look, um, there's a more senior position come up. I think you're absolutely right for it. Do the paperwork and let's get you through the interviews in the next couple of weeks. And I remember walking away thinking, oh my goodness, that's amazing. You know, they've really noticed me and recognized me, and this is fantastic. And so that means that the director must know all about the good work I've been doing, must know everything. And that's why he's tapped me on the shoulder. And we then went through the formal process of the interviews. And I vividly remember him saying to me, I can still see myself sat in the office opposite
Mm.
him. And I vividly remember him saying, what's the reason that we should give you this job? I was floored.
Yeah.
I was floored. I couldn't self promote.
No.
I had no idea how to talk about my achievements, my accomplishments, how to use the I instead of the we. I talked about us as a team. I talked about how much work I did collaboratively. I talked about how much I like to work with everybody and how I got on with them and how I thought that might help me lead them.
Yeah.
Not one element of it was about my value proposition, why I was unique, why I was different. And what I didn't know at the time is that men are promoted on the basis of their potential
Mm-hmm.
and women on the basis of their experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I come out of that interview thinking, I'm not sure about his reaction, but maybe he was just, yeah, maybe it's just a done deal. And of course, it wasn't a done deal. Of course, he didn't promote me.
No.
And I think that was a really big learning curve for me. It cost me, but I think it cost me more than the job. It
Yeah.
cost me some confidence,
Mm-hmm.
and it made me, it sort of, it woke me up. It was one of those life's aha moments. Hang on a minute. There's something, why is it that I can't find those words? And that's when I started in my early to mid 20s. I started to go down the route of just reading more, researching more, understanding more about the challenges that women have.
Mm-hmm.
And I then, and again, I'm just kind of bringing the papers and the research to light, but in terms of my lived experience, in my next role, I then move into a role whereby it's more senior. Can't wait. I'm now in as group learning manager. This is all really exciting. And it could only have been 3 or 4 weeks in. And this is back in the day where you used to print off documents. So
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 weeks in the day. And I had the profit and loss document arrive on my desk. So for anybody who's listening, you'll know that it was 4 or 5 pages, and you'd have all your different columns, and you'd be able to see what the spend was and the P&L and all the rest. And I remember looking and thinking, wow, we're going to be up this month in terms of profit. It's really interesting. And then I remember looking at the column, and of course the column was salary,
Mm-hmm.
because I was being paid 40% less than the person who I'd taken the job from.
Magic.
And I vividly remember sitting and thinking, hang on a minute.
Mm.
So I've now got a 40% pay gap. The person who has been promoted above me has got less experience than me. And actually, I've arrived with a blank sheet of paper. Well, interestingly, that part of their learning and development was done on a tennis court. Figure that out. Figure
Random.
that out from the corporate world. Um, they had no rigor. There was nothing there
Mm-hmm.
that was working in alignment with the business. And there I was creating working as an instructional designer, creating these programs, and yet I'd arrived at being paid 40% less.
I'm assuming the previous person was bloke.
Mm.
Yeah. So he probably got promoted out of the way because he wasn't doing very well.
Well, interestingly, he got promoted to a bigger job where he had further reach.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
It's bonkers, isn't it?
And then fast forward to the time where I choose that I'm now going to take this paperwork and I'm going to have a conversation about it.
Mm.
And I talk to the person who makes all the decisions and I say, look, this is a problem. This is a real problem. And it was a 10-minute conversation where he then agreed that I should be paid what I should be paid and they would give me the back pay on it.
Oh.
However,
Oh. The other shoe drops.
here's the caveat. So I've now closed my pay gap in a 10-minute conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy with that. However, less than 3-4 hours later, this person that I had reported into wanders into the office that I'm working in and says, interesting that you got your pay and that you've managed to close that gap. But I hear that you cried. I hear you cried and you sobbed, which is why he's done it, because he doesn't like looking at women cry. So I said, I didn't cry in that meeting. There was no sobbing in that meeting. I went in with my data, with the proof.
Mm-hmm.
I asked for what I needed. But
Wow.
the narrative was that I'd sobbed.
And that's just infantilizing you yet again. It's like, oh, look, the poor girls found us out that we were like literally pulling a fast one. And because you probably ran rings around the chap that had the purse strings, he had to invent a way of saying, she really forced me with her histrionics. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And then went on
And
and told everybody. Oh, great.
mm,
Awesome.
then went and told everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was in a position where these people were now coming to me to ask me what had happened and how I'd done it. And yet they were more senior than me. So they already knew what I was earning and they knew what the gap was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going back to the point about what did I score in the Good Girl Deprogramming quiz. Yes, I'm a rebel woman, but actually I'm a rebel woman because of all of these experiences, because of these lived experiences, because of doing the work of 3 people in one job, because of sacrificing my spare time, because of me being in the car at 8 o'clock. I vividly remember being in the car at 8 o'clock on Christmas Eve, still trying to get home. And I remember being told that that was just the job, but yet they were all at home.
Mm.
And these are all things that at the time you just take as, wow, it is what it is. I'm quite happy working there. I'm okay. At least they look after me when something goes wrong
Yeah, and at least they're paying you properly now.
and they're paying me. But actually, during that time, my sister died. So I'm the older of 2 sisters. And during that time, the middle sister died. She passed of terminal cancer and left behind 2 children.
Mm.
And I was allocated 2 weeks off to deal with that. I then returned back to the business and I'm on my feet for 4 days straight training.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the one hand, I needed a distraction from it. On the other hand, there was something about culture meant that I felt grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's that good girl programming. Oh, thank you so much. I've had 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I was dealing with the loss of a sister that I'd just watched for 5 years go through cancer treatment and pass away. I was dealing with, it was actually me that was asked to tell her children that she'd passed. I was dealing with that. And then I was back at work. And I just think that oftentimes, and again, when I talk to my clients, oftentimes we're so grateful for the flexi work. We're so grateful for the various times that the organizations give a little bit. We tend to just end up giving ourselves
Yeah.
wholeheartedly, with no boundaries, with no restrictions, with no expectations. And we go, and in particular, the hybrid work and the flexi work piece. I think it's
Mm.
really interesting that just in the last week, in fact, since we booked this podcast, it's interesting that we're now in a position where Amazon AWS services have brought women back, or have brought people back into the office for 5 days a week.
Yep.
But what we know is that, of course, demographics that will affect most will be women who won't be able to commit to that,
Mm-hmm.
or will have their lives changed and altered significantly in order to do so. An
Yep.
hour commute in, probably an hour commute home, additional childcare. And yet there will be women still feel grateful that they've got their job. Well, they're a
Mm-hmm.
nice company, they're a nice business. Well, we did work from home for 4 years.
Yes. But they did promise that this would be forever now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we've U-turned it. And
Mhm.
I can't help thinking, and I can't help being of the opinion that these U-turns, the likes of Zoom that brought everybody back in, there's so many organizations that have done it. Boots did it, didn't they, recently in the Nottingham area? I can't
Mm.
help thinking that this is a way, again, for corporates to get away with not paying high levels of redundancy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't help thinking. And again, the individuals who it is detrimental to are the women,
Yeah.
because it's women that have 3.7 hours of unpaid care to do a day versus men's 1.5. It's women that will end up having their time, their personal time, crushed and lost because they're traveling to the office, or they go ahead and they find a different role. But the stress level,
Mm-hmm.
the mental load, sorry, to do that is incredible,
Yeah.
incredible. And I'm a bit tainted this week from speaking to several of those women and
Mm. Yeah.
watching their tears because they've now got to adapt life around that corporate requirement that doesn't have any evidence sat behind it.
Well, there's no evidence that working in
No,
offices,
no,
the
no.
person, it's like it depends on the person, and the person should have the autonomy to choose. And this is a hill I will die on, where they work best. I couldn't work in an office because, all of these undiagnosed neurodivergences. I didn't realize that. I just thought I couldn't work in an office. So I would pretend all day and then come home and do my work at home in the quiet. So it doesn't suit everybody, and it's really not fair. So fast forward to you now being a rebel woman, and you raising, I would say you are raising other rebel women. Think with your coaching, is that right?
So the work that I do is purely focused and purely centered through the female lens, and it is about creating confidence where women feel like they're in chaos. So the
Mm.
reason I work as the woman behind the women is because I've seen, not only have I experienced personally in my career the challenges, whether it's the hybrid working, whether it's the flexible piece, the amount of childcare I went through, particularly during my divorce, was unreal,
Mm.
unreal. And I still had to be present. I still had to be in.
Yep.
So if I also think about the industry that I worked in, and that was recruiting and talent acquisition. And if I think about the number of organizations that lowballed women, that didn't promote women, I saw it. I saw it really regularly, all the time. I saw databases full of men when it was engineering, and full
Mm.
of women when it was secretarial roles. And so it really, it really didn't sit well with me at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if we now fast forward to today, the work I do is all as a culmination of the background that I have. So 20 plus years in learning and development. I've worked as a woman in male dominated environments. I've seen how women get treated. And what I now do is spend my time working with women to help them to refine their confidence, to really be able to express out loud what it is they want from their career. So, what do you want from life?
Mm.
If you're 80 and you looked back, how would you be spending your days now? Because that's all that matters, right?
Yep.
It's all that matters. Now, everybody's answer to that will be different. Everybody's answer. But actually, if you were 80 and you were to look back, how would you be best spending your days? Because actually, that's really what you want. That's your utopian answer. That's where your heart and head sing together. That's where all your emotions, that's where all your wants, your needs, your desires for life sit. They actually, now for some of my clients, they might sit in an 8-bedroom property. They might sit with horses on the field, and they might sit with 2 nannies. Cool. Let's get you there. No problem. With some of my clients, it might sit, I want to earn the same or a bit more than I am earning, but I want to be able to do the school drop off. Cool. Let's do that. Everybody has a different set of what utopia looks like, and everybody has different drivers, different experiences, different values, different wants, different emotional needs in order to feel as though they have done a good job. Some people really like respect, they like kudos, they like the senior levels. Other people don't care about the job titles, they just want to make sure they've got the income. So I guess the point I'm making is that every client's different, but nonetheless, every client that's come across is coercive control that's been through the commercial organization. They've come across a position whereby they're no longer able to use their voice. Every time they do use it, it doesn't land. And they've probably found themselves in a position whereby they feel totally undervalued. They know they're underpaid, and they need some support to get some leverage.
Yeah.
And it is leverage that creates outcomes. You know, if you rewind back to the way that I increased my salary, I had the leverage, I had the data. There you go. That's why it was a 10-minute conversation. It wasn't a whine, it wasn't a whinge, it wasn't a cry. It was, there's the data, that's the gap.
What we're
I've been
doing
here more
about
than 2
it.
years. We are rolling, right? And he was off guard because he wasn't expecting the conversation. I bowled in, good morning, how are you? Yes, very well, how are you? Excellent. Here's this data, and this is the problem I've got with it.
So you didn't go in like, you know, it's like, oh, I'm really sorry to bother you.
Oh no, I had data. That's leverage, right? Leverage is everything. So where the leverage is another opportunity that you've been offered that maybe you don't even necessarily wholeheartedly want to take, but it's enough to have your organization sit up and think, actually, if she does go, we lose not only her as an individual, but we lose her leadership skills, we lose her influencing skills, we lose the experience that she's got from the business, we lose all those relationships that she's developed internally, externally, with her supply chain, with customers, with clients across the business. We lose all of that. Actually, is it worth it? No, it isn't. And hang on a minute, we can match this offer. Right, well, now you can match it and you can add a bit more. I'll hang about for 18 months. Oh, and incidentally, I'm not coming in 5 days a week. So it is about having a really powerful piece of leverage. Now, 95% of my clients have actually found their alternative roles through their networks. And my clients tend to, I would say 80%, they move on anyway. Leverage was the exercise to help their confidence, but actually they'll move on because they'll find an organization that really is interested and is interesting to them.
Values them.
Yeah, same values, they mirror and they match.
Yeah.
So the work I do is about helping women to first up level their confidence. Then it's helping them to refine and define that value proposition. So how do you use that muscle of self-promotion? How do you make sure that when people do meet with you, you're creating the right impression management? And then the third piece is about your exposure. Who doesn't know about you that needs to know about you, and how do we get you in front of them? And as soon as you match together value proposition and the right people, doors open. Yeah, that's where the chief exec sits up and goes, oh, hang on, we need one of them. We spoke to Michelle a few months ago. Bring her in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so fascinating. So I read a book. I'm going to completely ruin this because I can't remember who wrote it. Meredith, somebody, Brag Better.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, and like, this is me having left corporate in 2016, realizing that we do zero self-promotion. We don't even think that's a part of the job. Whereas somehow our male colleagues are took to the side and, you know, told how they'd learn this by osmosis, clearly. And I was thinking, wow, that would have been an absolute game changer if I knew that was, you know, we don't even know it's required.
We don't know. Women aren't women are not educated unless they get themselves on a female talent program, and that
Hmm.
requires the female talent program to have some scientific rigor
Hmm.
behind it. Unless they're on a program, nobody's going to tell them that only 10% of their career success is down to performance.
Hmm.
Nobody's going to tell them that, because
No.
the org is going to tell you that your career success is down to performance. Hence, you're going to spend 80 to 90% of your working day in performance.
Yeah.
But actually, the stats tell us, as long as you're ticking the boxes, as long as you are operating to full performance, that performance itself is only responsible for 10%. 30% of your career success is then down to your image, your brand, about what do people say about you when you're not in the room. It's impression management. So
Hmm.
impression management is responsible
Yeah.
for opening doors. And then the further 60% is about your network, and it's about your exposure. It's about who doesn't know about you, who needs to know about you. Think of the industry events you could be at where people could be talking about you. Think about the networking groups. Think about the employee resource groups. Think about where do people hang out.
Mm.
You can get an opportunity to meet with them and really talk about your value proposition in such a way that they can see how you can come in and solve their problems.
And we don't know any of this.
No, no. And this is everything that I do with my women to get them to a point where everything from their LinkedIn mirrors and matches their bio, that they understand how to talk about themselves in such a way that they can create value in a conversation, how to put themselves out there to network, but do it without having to miss the kids at dinner.
Hmm. No.
Because we could network forever, couldn't we? But you're missing out on something because we're always
I think
pulled.
to be very strategic. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And
No.
then and then at the point that my clients are offered, we're then in a position where I'll help them negotiate. And it is interesting because my clients know that at the point of negotiation, we have to speak before we do anything. Because
Hmm.
I'm not going to let them take a role for the salary that sounds okay. We're taking a salary that is absolutely on point for those shitty Monday mornings where it's pissing it down with rain and you've got to get a flight. But you know you're not going to see the kids for 3 days. Or you're not going to see your partner for 3 days. Where you're going to have to do the board pack and somebody else is going to try and talk about it on your behalf. We're taking the salary that accommodates and pays for those days, and that's the one that we're pushing for.
Mm.
Because ultimately we know that women are at least 22% underpaid. So let's make sure we get you over that threshold
Hmm.
before we start taking any offers.
And that's when the biggest chance of an uplift is when you're changing jobs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, because that other than that, it has to be justified in relation to other people. So you
Well,
can't.
I think it's interesting. I think other than that, you have to have leverage. Suddenly, what other people are earning comes of absolutely no consequence when you've got leverage. Right time and leverage, what anybody else is earning suddenly doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Ooh, I wish we could roll back sort of 20 years and have you by my side when I had I say a proper job. It's like this isn't a proper job, clearly.
This is a very proper job,
I
Michelle.
know.
Very proper.
I always say this isn't a proper job. It's like, yes, it is. Okay, so I have a feeling I know what this last question is going to be, the answer, but I'll ask it anyway. So I want people to have listened to this or watched this and come away with some thoughts and a question to reflect on. So what would be a question that you would put to the audience?
I think I alluded earlier to the piece around fast forwarding so that you can then turn your lens and look backwards. You know, if we're lucky enough to live to a ripe old age, actually, how would you have spent your time and what is important to you? Because it's that we strive for.
Mhm.
That's what that's what leaves a legacy. That's what makes us feel as though we've achieved in life. And yes, there will always be a balance of income. And believe me, when it comes to my clients, I push for the highest possible income we can get. Leverage, 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 leverage. Hold your water. I don't let them chase offers. No, 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 no. We sit tight and we hold. But for everybody listening, there will be, when they reverse their lens, there will be important moments for them. So
Mhm.
figure out, what are your important moments? and then reverse engineer. So if that important moment is to earn another 50K, fine, reverse engineer. What do you need to do to get there? There's
Yeah.
nothing stopping you. You can find your path. If it's a case that you want to work hybrid and you want to be with your children in the morning and in the evening, fine, reverse engineer from there. Find your path. But so I would say the first is to reverse engineer and really look at that lens. But very quickly, the second, and in the moment, is to understand if you're in a position whereby your confidence has been knocked. I want you to really understand how that's affecting your behaviour. So we all understand the Eric Berne stuff. We all know about the transaction analysis piece. We all know about the parent, the adult, the child. But just figure out whether or not at the moment your behaviours and your reactions are in child. If they're in child, it's likely that the organisation has put themselves in parent. So it's highly likely that you're upset a lot, you're emotional a lot, you're cross a lot, you don't know what to do, you're not sure what your boundaries are, you're probably struggling in every way. And we need to move you from child into adult to adult. And that means not waiting for validity. That means not waiting for praise. That means not waiting to be told what you can do. That means not waiting to ask for permission. It means moving adult to adult and saying, actually, here are my needs. What can you do? Here's what I'm looking to do work-wise in the next 18 months. How can we facilitate that? So that we don't feel so lacking in control. And oftentimes in the first session with my clients, they feel totally out of control. And a lot of it is that emotional state that they're in because of the coercive control of the organisation that they've worked in and the culture that they've been in.
Yes. Love it. Love it. And of course, I could talk to you all day yet again.
Me too.
But we're supposed to be keeping these short so people will actually listen. So thank you so much for there's so many bits of magic in this. I'm like, I can't wait to listen to it again. So thank you for coming along and being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. It's an honour. Thank you.